He served as Vice President of the St. Tammany Parish Municipal Association. He was a member of the St. Tammany Parish School Board, served on a number of boards over the years, and he's very active in the parish working with seniors and youth. And I can tell you, after visiting his church for multiple different events, they have a wonderful congregation who have a real heart for God and for our community. So, Pastor Burris.
Okay. I'm very grateful, Maureen, for this opportunity to come and to share a word with you all tonight. First, I'd like to introduce my friends who came for support, Dr. Shobi Ducree of Slidell and Dr. Frederick Young of Covington, Starlight Baptist Church and Victory Bible Church. Let us pray. Father God, we thank you now for this opportunity to be here at this meeting. We ask now blessings on this parish government. Bless the parish president, bless the council. We ask that you continue to bless them each day as they make decisions to make St. Tammany Parish the great parish that it is. We ask now, God, that you will touch them and give them good health and strength. We ask now that you continue to bless us and keep us in your care. And God bless St. Tammany Parish. This is our prayer. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Madam Clerk, would you call a roll, please?
Mr. Dean? Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Thompson? Mr. Toledano? Mr. Tanner? Mr. Belisario?
Present.
Mr. Lorino?
Here.
Mr. Groby? Mr. Canulet? Ms. O'Brien?
September 17,
Mr. Stefanczyk?
September 19.
Mr. Bender? Ms. Blanchard? Mr. Smith? You have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Just for everyone in the audience that has not attended a meeting, public comments, a 3-minute time limit is established for each member of the public wishing to speak for or against an item on the agenda, except appeals. If we have an appeal discussion tonight, appeal speaking time per side will be 10 minutes for the side to give their initial statement, 3 minutes rebuttal, and a 2-minute conclusion. We have a couple items on the special agenda, a public hearing, Board of Review. In accordance with the provision of LARS 47-1992, St. Tammany Parish Council hereby convenes tonight in public session as a Board of Review to entertain complaints and/or appeals from any taxpayer aggrieved by the ad valorem assessment levied against his, her, or their property. The dates for those hearings will be September 17th through September 19th. The assessor of St. Tammany Parish has duly advertised notice of this public hearing in accordance with the law. The deadline for receipt of appeals for taxpayers to the Board of Review will be 4:30 p.m. September 10th, 2019. If no appeals are lodged by this date or appeals are lodged but resolved through the parish assessor office, the time will automatically expire and terminate without the need for the parish council to reconvene to so declare. Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, it's my honor to recognize our Employee of the Month, and especially proud tonight. Whereas Laura Gatlin has been a dedicated St. Tammany Parish government employee for over 9 years. She joined the Department of Engineering on June 29, 2010. She currently serves as a project manager in our Department of Public Works. Whereas Laura is detailed-oriented and is meticulous in her management and coordination of the many projects she oversees, and whereas she provides thorough oversight and excellent communication with all members of her team, our vendors, and most importantly, the residents who have questions or concerns about any project in which she is involved. And whereas she is detailed in the reporting and tracking of all projects under her responsibility, to ensure milestones are met, payments are made appropriately, and our records are accurate. And whereas Laura's recent assignments have included projects such as the French Branch Pond, which is the largest detention pond ever constructed by St. Tammany Parish government, Westwood Pond, St. Tammany Coastal Protection Project, and the Mandible Bypass Road. And whereas Laura is dedicated, dependable, and reliable, and we are proud to have her as a member of our parish government team, and thankful for her hard work in the Department of Public Works Engineering. Now therefore, I, Patricia Brister, as parish president, do hereby recognize the hard work and accomplishments of Laura Gatlin. And when I tell you, we call Laura to get just a little bit of information about a project that someone's called about, she gives us thorough reports on everything we ask for. So I especially am thankful for all of her hard work. Thank you, Laura, for what you do for all of us. May I go on to the next?
Madam President, you go right ahead.
I would like to ask Senator Jack Donahue, Representative Scott Simon, Representative Kevin Pearson, and you, Mr. Chairman, if you would come forward, and Renee Roberts, please, come up with us. So we asked these three gentlemen to come tonight because they have served us so well in our state legislature, and they will not be going back. They have term limited or decided not to go forward, and we wanted just to say thank you. It's a hard, hard job. We know how hard legislation is, and they're there every day doing their very, very best. So in recognition of their hard work, commitment, and service to our community, to St. Tammany Parish, and the people of the state of Louisiana, on this 5th day of September 2019, I and Chairman Lorino have signed these proclamations, and we want to issue them our greatest thanks, and we have a little gift for them too. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Jack. And thank you very much. So please help me in recognizing them. Can you get a little closer, Josephine, and let's get a picture? And Renee Roberts is our liaison with the legislature, and really keep, come on up here with us. Stand right by you. And if you all would like to say something, please feel free to do so. We will get you one of those pictures, pretty girl. Thank you very much. Would like to do?
Thank you, President Brister and Chairman Lorino, Council Member and Women's. Thank you for 12 years. We've enjoyed being elected 3 times to represent St. Tammany and Tangipahoa Parish, and actually glad to not have to represent them anymore, and I'm going to stay home and do my work. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just I want to echo those same thoughts. We got started years ago as a concerned citizen wanting to make a difference in the state, and when we got there, we realized just how big of a job it really was. But I just want to shout out real quick to our parish president, who had made countless trips to Baton Rouge and brought the word of St. Tammany Parish to us as it was going through the process. So we appreciate her commitment to the parish and her commitment to our job up there as legislators. So thank you very much for the award tonight, and thank you, President Bister.
Thank you.
And thank you again. I'll try and be sweet. I mean, it is bittersweet. I mean, it's like we are, as Senator Donahue said, it's kind of like, we'll kind of be glad not doing this, but we're going to miss it. They're great. They're hardworking people in Baton Rouge. I have all the confidence in the world of those who will go after us and continue the job. So great people up there working for you. You don't realize how hard they work, and will continue to work and just move the state ahead. So thank you. It's been an honor of a life to be able to do this. Thanks again.
Break it on the way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we did fail to mention Jack's better half, Senator Donahue's better half, Mara Donahue, who's here with us tonight too. Thank you, Mara, for sharing Jack with all of us. Thank you. All right, I'm finished. Thank you, sir.
There were three.
You want to do, which one? Where's Steve's at?
Right there.
Okay, all righty. Mr. Stefanski, I think you have something for us.
So many times this group, we have honored people that have done outstanding jobs, and especially the young people of our community that have contributed to the overall welfare of St. Tammany Parish. Tonight, we're going to do the same with some other people, and I think they have distinguished themselves now on the national level. This is a group of Republican teens that started in Slidell, but has people from all throughout the parish as part of their group. The team does community service projects as well as they are learning about politics, and they are helping several candidates as they go forth. So, and I know some of us have been using them, so we understand what that is. But I want to read to you the proclamation. St. Tammany Parish Government Certificate of Recognition. St. Tammany Parish wishes to recognize the Republican Teens of Slidell, TARS, for receiving the 2019 Outstanding TAR Club in the Nation Award. This is the 5th year in a row that they have been selected as the Outstanding TAR Club in the nation. This group of 37 young Republicans from throughout the parish completed a total of 20,443 service hours to our community. We need to recognize them for their dedication to educating the public and for the many hours of volunteerism in our community. This certificate of recognition was unanimously approved by the St. Tammany Parish Council on the 5th of September 2019. And I want to congratulate them, and I hope y'all will too. And I think, oh, they've already gathered around me. Okay. I've had, by the way, the opportunity to go to many of their meetings, and I really think it's an outstanding group of young people. And somebody that I think will be something that we can look forward to in the future, to replacing guys like me and different people that, you know, that will not be politicians too much longer. But congratulations to all of you. And I think, Brianne, are you going to be the one to speak?
Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank our parish president and Councilman Steve Stefanzik for everything and all the donations y'all have helped us with. And without any of y'all's help, none of this could be possible. And I thank you all so much. It is such an honor to get Best Club in the Nation 5 years in a row. Thank you.
I also want to recognize Odette Jennings, who is the leader of this group. She's the adult sponsor of this group, and recognize her at this time. Thank you. No, well, you can if you want to.
I just want to thank everybody for your support, because without it, believe me, this would not be possible.
And last but not least, to many of the councilmen, I want to thank you. You've all contributed, or a lot of you have contributed to the support of this group, and I know I appreciate it, and I know they really appreciate it. So thank you guys, and gals for doing that, and Pat Brister as well, I should say.
Thank you. I'm one of those, guy or gal one. You want to turn around, let's get a picture? Okay. They represent us very, very well in DC, believe me.
Where's Brianne? She needs to be over there.
You can stand right there.
Keep me on target tonight, Jan. Keep me on target tonight.
All right.
Jay?
Everybody smile.
I'll try my best. Yours is a little bit bluer.
Thank you very much, guys.
I left the blue one at home.
Oh, yours, because
At one of your meetings. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, young men and ladies. St. Tammany is very proud. We're very proud of you. So once again, thank you on behalf of the council. And go do it again next year. We'll be right there for you. Okay, next we have a presentation by Mr. Eric Bosch with LA Port CPA regarding the 2018 St. Tammany Parish audit. Mr. Bosch?
Yes, sir.
It's yours, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. It's always nice to see a big group here to talk about auditing and accounting. Certainly appreciate that. We'll talk debits and credits.
As soon as you finish, they're all leaving.
Right on. We have completed our audit of the financial statements, the comprehensive annual financial report for the year ended December 31st, 2018 for St. Tammany Parish. Before I get into the report and the summary of the findings and the results, a tremendous thanks to the administration, to the finance department, to Leslie Long, Annie, Laura, the rest of the group, as far as the cooperation, the assistance that we receive. Just to assure you all as council members that we do receive the full and complete cooperation of the staff and management at St. Tammany. We ask a lot of questions, we ask for a lot of information, and those questions are answered promptly. The information that we ask for is provided to us quickly in the order that we need it, so we sincerely appreciate that. The CAFR, that Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, is roughly 250 pages. And our contribution, LaPorte CPAs, the contribution to that is pretty minimal, about 8 pages. And the pages that we provide are the opinions and the reports that are required under government auditing standards and by the legislative auditor, et cetera. The first report that we provide, the first opinion, is on the actual financial statements themselves. And our opinion on the financial statements was an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that an independent CPA can provide on a set of financial statements. The opinions that we cover include the governmental activities, the business type activities, the component units, which there are plenty, 34 component units that we need all of that information to make sure that the CAFR is complete. The major funds, which include the general fund, and then the remaining fund information. And so that unmodified opinion means there were no departures from generally accepted accounting principles, that the transactions, the events that took place that impacted the financial statements were recorded properly and in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The second item that makes it an unmodified opinion was that there were no scope limitations. And essentially all of the information that we had asked for, all the questions that we had asked was provided to us. But in addition, all the information that we asked from third parties, financial institutions in regards to bank balances, debt balances, investment account balances, things like that, that information that we need in order to opine upon the financial statements, that information was provided to us as well. So again, no scope limitations, no departures from generally accepted accounting principles. The other thing to mention is that we did not have any audit adjustments that were posted to the financial information in order for them to be fairly stated in all material respects. An audit adjustment would be something that we would find as part of our audit that resulted in an adjustment to an account balance that, if not made, those financial statements may not be presented fairly in accordance with GAAP. With any governmental type audit that we perform, as I mentioned before, it's performed in accordance with government auditing standards, and that requires a second report. And that report covers internal controls over financial reporting and compliance with laws and regulations. And so we do not opine upon internal control over financial reporting. However, under the government auditing standards, we are required to perform procedures to evaluate, to identify internal controls, to document internal controls. And if there were any deficiencies, significant deficiencies or material weaknesses with internal controls, we would be required to report that. It would be included in that CAFR, in that Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. I'm happy to report that we did not have any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that are required to be reported under the government auditing standards. And as I mentioned, the second piece to that report is compliance with laws, regulations, other matters, grant agreements, grant contracts, things like that, that could have a material impact to the financial statements if there was non-compliance. The areas that we cover, some are mandated just by state law and with the legislative auditor in regards to bid law, budget law, allowable expenditures, debt compliance, fiscal agency and cash management. We also test the road inventory system and making sure that roads that are being handled and being cared for, and as well as roads coming into the inventory system are properly documented, properly approved, and are appropriate. Some of the other areas that we cover, payroll testing, credit card transactions, which for so many folks could be the low-hanging fruit, and also fuel card testing. So with all of that, we noted no instances of non-compliance with those laws, those regulations, and the grant agreements that we're required to test under the government auditing standards. And then the final report that includes an opinion pertains to those grants, those programs, those expenditures that are sourced by federal dollars. Even if the dollars are coming through a state agency or another governmental entity or different agency, nonprofit agency, if it's sourced by federal dollars, we build a schedule, management builds a schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And from there, we need to identify those major programs that are required to be tested. The Single Audit Act is what this commonly is referred to, or uniform guidance. And so with those major programs based on dollar amount, the amount of expenditures for that particular program, or based on risk. Is it a fairly new program? Has there been a change in grant management for that particular program? We identify those major programs. For this year, for the 2018 audit, the programs that we tested, the Community Development Block Grants, the Airport Improvement Program, and the Flood Mitigation Assistance Grant. So the two areas that we test there or that we cover, one is compliance with the applicable compliance elements. Those include allowable cost and maybe eligibility, certain financial reporting requirements associated with those grants. In addition, the individual grant document may have particular provisions, special provisions that we need to test and make sure that the entity, St. Tammany Parish, is complying with as well. So we test compliance for those major programs, but then we also test that there's internal controls over the compliance. So it's one thing to get it right by luck, but we want to make sure that there's design, that there's internal controls in place to make sure that those compliance elements for those programs are being complied with, that there is a structure in place for those compliance elements. So again, as I mentioned, we issue an opinion on compliance. Our opinion was an unmodified opinion. Again, the highest level of assurance that we can render on the federal award programs. And then secondly, we did not note any deficiencies, significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in regards to internal control over compliance. The final area that we covered that's now part of the CAFR, the Act 774 procedures. And now it was my understanding that maybe next month, I think a representative from the legislative auditor will be in attendance. And with 774, it's applicable strictly to governmental entities within St. Tammany Parish. It's the agreed upon procedures. And these procedures are promulgated, are provided to us by the legislative auditor. They may contact us at the beginning stages of the audit, asking for some input, but ultimately they're the ones that come up with the procedures and say, Laporte, go do this. And with that, the areas that we covered for this year, facility rental and usage, what we were looking at there, we're making sure that there were agreements in place. We had no exceptions. Collections, and one of the things that they're looking for as far as, again, segregation of duties. We had one small issue with the Tammany Utilities Slidell location, just based on the size. There's one individual that kind of handles most of the duties in regards to cash collection, depositing the cash, recording the cash. But again, based on the level of activity based on the size, we did not consider that to be a significant deficiency that would be required to be reported under the government auditing standards. Under board oversight, one of the areas that we were required to cover was whether or not there was documentation within the minutes that budget to actual comparisons for the general fund and for the special revenue fund was documented. Are you doing that evaluation and review? We didn't see that in the minutes, but it's my understanding that that information is now being provided to you all. And finally, a couple of things in regards to policies with credit cards. That from a credit card testing, we noted no exceptions as far as with the transactions. There was documentation, there was the appropriate approval for all the transactions that we tested. But what the legislative auditor was specifically asking for this year with credit cards, did the policy address cash advances? We did not see that within the policy, but again, it's our understanding that the policy has been updated to address that. And whether or not did it explicitly state who the approvers of the credit card statements were. And that policy didn't identify it, but again, that has been updated. So those issues desired by the legislative auditor have been since corrected. So overall, a good audit. And again, thanks to Leslie, thanks to her staff, thanks to all the administration for the assistance and cooperation. We sincerely appreciate it. Any questions?
Is there any questions? Mr. Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bosch,
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Very pleased from our perspective with the very, very good positive remarks. I have one question, and it's simply this. There was one or two entities that you mentioned because of the size, you didn't feel that the discrepancies were significant. Okay.
Correct.
My question is simply this. Even though not significant, were the people involved, in other words, were the people that are responsible for doing it correctly, have they been advised as to what necessary changes would need to be made to make it correct for the next audit?
That I don't know the answer, whether they have been advised as to what would make it correct. Ultimately, my understanding to make this correct with that segregation of duties would be to have another individual, another employee at that location that could take on some of those incompatible duties.
Okay.
So again, from a cost-benefit perspective, it becomes a budget decision as to whether or not is it worth it to have a second person that can take on some of those duties to achieve that control. But again, it comes with a cost. And so that decision, from my understanding, maybe has not yet been made.
I understand.
And there were no discrepancies in the transaction?
No, ma'am. No,
Oh.
there were no differences. We noted no discrepancies as far as.
Well,
with the
I'm glad, Leslie, I'm glad you made that point, okay? Yes. So that's good. And so basically what you're saying is this is going to be a governmental decision
Yes, sir.
on the cost benefit of it, but thankfully, no discrepancies.
That's right.
Which is great. I'm glad I asked the question.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Thank
yes, sir.
you,
And I was
Eric.
just going to elaborate and say that, so the transactions there at Crossgates, the office over in Slidell is a small portion of Tammany Utilities. And one of the things that we have addressed is that we do now have an armored car service that picks up all of our deposits. And that was one of the duties this person was doing as well. Not only was she collecting, but she was also making the trip to the bank. So that part has been addressed. But with regard to the amount of activity out there, the cost of putting another employee in that location outweighs the benefits, so.
I understand. Well, thank you for the explanation. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Any other?
Mr. Bosch, I see no other questions, and thank you very much, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you next year. And,
Yes, sir.
Watch out, everybody will be leaving as soon as you finish.
All right,
here,
more
okay?
debits and credits. Here we go.
All right, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. There's no motion needed to accept. Okay. All righty, number 5, presentation by Bob Rouse, Slidell Ministers Association regarding the appointment of a faith-based liaison to the St. Tammany Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness. How you doing, sir?
I'm well, thank you.
Good, thank you.
Madam President, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the council, it's a pleasure to talk with you this evening about the Office of Homeland Security of faith-based liaison. In the interest of time, I'll just go ahead and read a report if you don't mind.
Will you please go ahead? You have time, sir.
St. Tammany Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness appoints a faith-based liaison. I was appointed to that job about 1.5 years ago, and since then, Jim Faddick, I thought he was standing here. There's Jim. Since then, Jim Faddick of the North Shore Disaster Recovery, Inc. has joined me in that effort, bringing many, many years of experience, expertise, and a great network of people so that we can do a good job. The faith-based communities played an important role in the relief and recovery after Katrina and a number of other natural disasters since Katrina. Documented millions and millions of dollars of relief and resources have been given from within the parish as well as from outside the parish by different charitable agencies. The most effective work of the outside charitable organizations was done through local organizations. They came in, contacted a church, worked with them to get the job done to help people. The scope of the liaison position of the Emergency Operating Center is not only for natural disasters. The Homeland Security Emergency Preparedness addresses many other scenarios, including terrorist attacks, pandemics, hazardous materials, disasters, hazardous material disasters, mass shootings, and a whole lot more would be on their plate. Some of these plans currently address the role of the faith-based community in making the plan work for Homeland Security. Our quest is to develop this position in a way that will bring a meaningful connection between the 228-plus churches in St. Tammany Parish in the event of a disaster. Additionally, there's no formal coordination or identification of parachurch faith-based volunteer groups such as North Shore Disaster Recovery, Community Christian Concern, the Good Samaritan work with St. Luke's, the Latter-day Saints, the Mormon groups who come and help us, and many other groups. There's no point, there's no place in the middle to go to that can help coordinate these things. Our hope is that we can provide some level of organizational structure, coordination, and efficiency in the development of resources commanded by the churches in the parachurch volunteer groups. In order to accomplish this, there's a need for a small crew of paid standby individuals. And this is in the same way that the fire department and the police department are standby organizations until something happens. They train, they prepare, they get their things to working just right, and when something happens, they're ready to go. Faith-based liaison would assume the responsibility of helping the churches in St. Tammany Parish to make that happen. Some of the ongoing lists that need to be attended for while there is no emergency is to gathering contact information with the different churches. Who do you call? Who's in charge? You call the phone book, somebody answers the phone. Are you the right person to talk to make decisions for your church? An inventory of resources. Does your church or organization have a commercial kitchen? Do you have a feeding ministry? Do you have transportation? Can you help us with buses and things like that? So just to know where these people are. There are many willing people to serve. We just have to know where they are, who they are, and how to contact them. Giving and receiving training to the people. For instance, helping churches to develop their own disaster plans. And these are all things that we discussed with Dexter, Accardo, and Clarence Poe in terms of doing parish-wide. Networking between the groups. We need to know each other. We need to know who's out there doing what. Keeping the accumulated data up to date. You know, whatever I give you today, 30 days from now is going to be wrong. Somebody left, a phone number changed, something happened. We need to keep the list up to date. That's an ongoing thing, as well as many other administrative areas. Mr. Ricardo and Mr. Poe understand the need and have been very helpful and very patient with us in helping to develop a structure and to encourage us and empower us to make this faith-based liaison work as it should. Here's the crux of the matter. There are 40 seats and the Emergency Operating Center, the EOC. Of the 40 seats that are there, 2 of them belong to the faith-based liaison. The other 38 seats, and this is a place that looks like NASA's command center, the tables, computers, microphones, headsets, all, walkie-talkies, all kind of things there to communicate are in front of you. 2 of them belong to the faith-based community. The 38 that do not belong to us are funded by their organizations. For instance, the sheriff has a seat there, the coroner has a seat, the parish has many seats for the critical services that this parish performs, have many seats there. Also among the private sector, CLECO has a seat, and Washington St. Tammany and some of the other utilities have a place, so that when an emergency happens and there is an activation, the Office of Homeland Security knows exactly who to go to. They know where the people are. They're sitting in that room. All of those people, those 38 people, are funded by their organization. They're on salary. They were on salary to make the preparations. They're on salary when they sit there. And for 90 days, right after Katrina, the EOC was operational, and they sat there on salary. Our problem is we don't have a place to get a salary from. We don't have a stream of revenue coming in. And what we hope to be able to do is to be able to create a scenario and through a resolution, help the public to understand that what we're doing is a valid and needed work in the community, to help the public understand that we need funding to be able to go out. Our source of funding will be private funding. We're not going after any city. Fact is, we've already talked to them, and they don't have any money. So we're going to private sources, going to individuals, going to businesses who see the value of this, going to churches and asking them to put the money up. We need salaries. We need operational expenses. All the meetings that we've had up until now have strictly come out of pocket to meet the expenses. We need vehicles to be, when people come in from out of town, we need to be able to move things around. So there's a number of things that need to happen, and we need available funding. The result is better communication, better organization, more efficient use of the resources that we have. Our role is not a role of a command. Our role is that of a coordinator, to help, to assist, to coordinate, not to tell the church, you got to do this or you have to do that. If they decide they don't want to do what we need, that's up to them. But if they'll listen to us, we can help them to maximize that which they need. Jim brings a tremendous amount of experience with the North Shore disaster recovery, and if I may, just for a second, let Jim speak to that. May I, please? Sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. North Shore Disaster Recovery has had 63,000 volunteers from all 50 states and 43 countries around the world that have come to St. Tammany Parish to help rebuild homes for our citizens in need. They've done 2.6 million labor hours working on more than 3,300 projects in our area. That's all fine and good, except it's after the fact. What we do is the long-term recovery process. After a disaster has come and gone, the months ensuing, we start to uncover all these unmet needs. And my primary function, which isn't active right now, thankfully, is after a disaster to get together the members of the faith-based community, governmental organizations, civic organizations, other philanthropies, and the faith-based world to try to collaborate, coordinate, and cooperate and make the most of the resources that we have. What we're asking for is some legitimacy and credibility in going out to solicit the funding to have an ongoing proactive disaster preparation program. So that instead of waiting until disaster hits and then trying to figure out who's doing what, we already have all of that information together and we're ready to go. We know who has lodging, who has transportation, who has food. So I will thank you in advance for your support as we go out. And oddly enough, I work for a nonprofit, and I'm not here asking for money. But I appreciate your support, and I look forward to the upcoming months as we put together a program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for hearing us.
Thank you, Mr. Rouse. We appreciate it, and I think we're going to, Mr. Balisaro asked for personal privilege. Mr. Balisaro?
Thank you. What I want to say, Bob, as you know, and Jim, I've known Jim for years. I've been in meetings with him time and time again on what you do, and I'm with Catholic Charities and the Good Samaritans Ministry. I see the good. I see the people who come in from all over the country to help the people in St. Tammany Parish. One of the things that I want to point out, I want to move the resolution up. It's resolution number C 6162 rather, that deals with this particular resolution. I need a second. Second by Chris. In this resolution, there's one key component that I worked with Don Henderson to add, because the one that was approved by the city is slightly different than this. We had added one part that was critical, is on the funding. On the second page, the first "be it further resolved" states that the Parish of St. Tammany does hereby further support that private funding sources be identified to fund said appointment, that the appointee shall not be considered an employee of the parish nor paid by the parish. The city does not have that kind of information, but Steve Stefanski and a few other council members felt more comfortable with this, and so did I. So therefore, what I'd like to do now is to suspend the rules and adopt this resolution.
Ms. Blanchard?
Yeah, get the vote. Second.
Ms. Blanchard, second. Motion by Mr. Balisaro.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Slow down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Motion to move up.
Yes. I made that motion. It was seconded by Michelle.
Said there's no need to suspend the rules.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Sit up to vote then.
Please vote. Move up.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Now we need a vote to approve the resolution. Need a second for somebody?
Yeah.
Michelle?
Ms. Blanchard. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Y'all have a great night.
Take care.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to appointments. Number one, resolution to appoint Dr. Charles Foy, George Landrum, and John Raymond to the Board of Commissioners for the St. Tammany Parish Fire Alarm Appeals Board. In order to appoint tonight, we need to suspend the rules to appoint, which requires 10 votes of the council. And I have two cards on this. I have Mr. Robbie and Chris Kaufman. Whoever wants to come on up and talk on it before we vote will be fine. Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Balisaro,
Mr.
second by Mr. Canulet.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon.
Go ahead, Rob.
What I wanted to do is just give y'all an update on the ordinance. Most of y'all know it was multiple meetings, multiple discussions to make sure we had the right ordinance, the right language, and I'm happy to report it is the best ordinance. It is a tremendous help. What the ordinance has done, it has given us a tool to bring to the table, a table with the owners of the business, the chronic alarm users. I'm gonna give y'all some examples. We have one apartment that had 7 alarms in a very small time frame. Going through the process with the ordinance, we were able to finally get in touch with the owner of the apartment complex. That, with the backing of the ordinance, we sat down at the table with the owner. The owner realized the problem, made management changes, took some recommendations for us. I'm happy to report no more alarms. Another apartment complex had 15 alarms up until April 29th. After going through the whole process of what the alarm ordinance wanted us to do, got back to the table with them since April 29th, 1 alarm, so 15 to 1. 2 more businesses that we had issues with, they were piecing out the alarm system, which was making a green tag, which is still in compliance with the state fire marshal, but they were still having multiple alarms. With the backing of the ordinance, after sitting down with them, what they decided to do was replace the whole system, no more alarms. So the alarm ordinance is working, and on behalf of the Chiefs Association, we thank y'all for your support, and just keep it up. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. One question, have you had to find anyone along
Yes,
this
sir.
process?
We had to find four. One of them decided to do the training waiver. That was one of the apartments. I pulled the fine because he basically fired his management, got new management, and did our recommendations. So I felt it was okay to pull a fine because it's not about the fine.
So you relieved
And
that
the
person.
other ones, they got the smallest fine possible, and the minute they got it, everything was taken care of.
And what was that fine?
$250.
So it was under the 500?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Chief Coffin?
I'm just glad I'm not on the time clock tonight.
Oh, you are, don't
You
worry.
are, don't worry.
Don't hit the
worry
button.
about that.
I just wanted to also give the update. First of all, thank Gene and Mike for continuing to come to our Chiefs Association meetings every month. It's made a huge difference. I also want to thank the entire committee. I know it took us almost 4 or 5 different months, 5 different meetings over a 4 or 5 month period. Emily and Colin for all the language that we made changes with. I just want to thank y'all for helping us with public service. And we have a unified vote in this parish. We have all the cities are being presented the same ordinance to adopt, and we're standing together on public safety. And I just want to thank y'all because it's working. It was a very positive ordinance. We went through a very sensitive discussion, but we came out with a good product. It worked, and I want to thank y'all for that. I also want to let you know we stay on the cutting edge in St. Tammany. Jefferson Parish contacted me. They have an apartment complex that no one is leaving because of the false alarms, the same issue that brought us to this council. They are taking our ordinance, they will review it, make whatever changes that will accommodate their legal team, but Jefferson Parish is looking at what we have done in St. Tammany for life safety. So I just want to thank you for working with us, and we look forward to working with y'all in the future.
We need a motion.
Thanks again, and have a great night.
I just read it. Thank you, Chief.
Just read it and tell them we have not received it.
Okay.
Okay, we've made the motion, we have to vote on this now.
Yes, we need to vote on the motion, please.
Mr. Canty-Let, Ms. O'Brien? Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, thank you. Number 2, resolution to appoint one member to replace Ron Murphy, resigned on the Board of Commissioners for the St. Tammany Parish Fire Protection District Number 8. At this time, we have not received any nominations, so therefore I'd like to continue to next month.
Mr. Dave? Need a second? Second from Red.
Thank you.
Should vote.
We don't need to vote.
Yes.
Okay, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay.
Steve?
Hold on one second, Steve. I'm going to get to what you got. Just take it easy. The consent calendar, any items not pulled from the consent calendar automatically approved in whole by one vote. Items pulled from the consent calendar are discussed and voted upon individually. A majority vote of the entire council, 8, is required to adopt the consent calendar. So far tonight, items pulled, we have no ordinances for introduction. We have resolutions, number 1, C-6166.
6-1.
Correct?
6161.
6161. Number 2, C-6162.
Which we approved.
Okay, we already did. Gotcha. And we have number 8, C-6168. That's what we have on those. Okay. Well, I am going to finish it.
Oh, okay. Well, you can do first.
Okay. All right. Mr. Dean, do you have anything, sir? Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Thompson? Mr. Taladano? Mr. Tanner? You go right ahead. I got plenty of time. Mr. Balisaro?
I've done enough.
Okay. Mr. Grovey?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Mr. Grovey.
Yes, sir. No.
No?
Yes,
Okay.
none.
Mr. Canulette,
None also.
Ms. O'Brien,
None, sir.
Mr. Steve,
No.
Mr. Bender,
No, sir.
Ms. Blanchard,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Smith.
None.
Thank you, sir. Any from the administration? Anything from legal? Anybody in the audience have anything that they wish to have pulled? Okay. Okay. Hearing none, I'd like to have a motion by Mr. Canulette
Second by Steve.
and second by Mr. Stefancic to go ahead and approve. All other ones not approved. I got you, Steve.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Mrs. Stefancic asked for a little personal privilege to talk about a item on the short-term rentals.
Yes, we had an ordinance drafted that we sent to the planning commi, or zoning commission, and they sent it back to us and asked us to review it and look at some other things. I've talked with Chairman Lorino. We're going to put together a work group to develop a short-term rental ordinance. And we need volunteers for it. We addressed it a little bit last month at the end of the meeting. We need volunteers from both the council and the public. And would like to get a balanced group with both people that are for and people that are against. I'm going to ask that you submit your name to Don Henderson, the council administrator, and give him all your contact information. We will probably be meeting once or twice a month in the next few months to develop this ordinance. So I'm asking for some input. If we don't get some input, we're going to go ahead with what we have on the board and on the group and develop an ordinance. So wanted to make that announcement tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it, and we'll get that moving as soon as possible. I'd like to ask the council if I could move up ordinance 6066AA. And the reason I'd like to move it up is there's a lot of people in the audience that would like to speak on this subject of fill mitigation. And there was a lot of information that was disseminated earlier that I need to make sure that is understood and cleared a little bit.
So moved.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Motion by Mrs. Stefancic, second by Mr. Canulette.
Okay.
Please vote.
We switch seats.
Mm-hmm.
We switch seats.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Thank you. And thank you, members of the council. I appreciate it. Before we get started and before I read it, well, I'll go ahead and read it so we can understand. Ordinance to amend Section 115-3 of the Parish Code of Ordinance relative to fill mitigation. It was introduced, and we had our last meeting, and it was passed at the meeting. And since that time, I have spoken to legal, and I'm going to read a little statement that legal has prepared for me so that everyone knows exactly what's going on. But before I do that, the ordinance that we passed had the term shall not in it. I can tell everyone that's sitting here in this audience right now, the word shall not from Mike Lorino motion has never, ever, ever, ever been thought about removing. Never. I'm only one vote on the council, but I can tell everybody in this audience tonight, in November, when we bring this back up, because that's what the motion will be, that that ordinance will include the term shall not. And there'll be some people that'll be speaking on this, and they will clarify that. That was never, ever an intention. I'm going to read the reason why we're not voting on it now, tonight. The Council's Civil Division staff and administration are currently reviewing the ordinance number 6066 and the Parish Code to ensure that all legal requirements are met and that a fair appeal process is in place. To allow for a timely, thoroughly review of the proposed ordinance, I'm requesting that the council postpone the adoption of ordinance number 6066 until the November council meeting. Any proposed amendments will be made available to the council and to the public. It will be on our public website. You will see it before it comes up. Everyone will have an opportunity to do that. That's exactly what we did with the work group. Everyone had an opportunity. Any proposed amendment will be available to the council and to the public at the meeting, which time the council may amend, reintroduce the ordinance for adoption at the December meeting. So that's the reason why it's being postponed tonight. Okay? Yes, sir. A motion by Mr. Stefancic, second by Mr. Canulet. Okay. All right. Okay. Mr. Smith, before we vote. I will.
I think I understood you to say that the ordinance will be adopted at the November?
It'll be introduced at the, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And adopted in December
Okay.
if everything goes through. And before we get to the people in the audience, I want to read something. It's amazing to me, and we all live in this world, that someone can post anything that they want on Facebook. Anything. I could post something about everybody sitting out in the audience. I don't like the clothes you wear, how you comb your hair, if you have hair like, no hair like me, whatever the case may be. And there's no ramification for someone that does something that is not true. But tonight, that's not what I'm going to talk about. What I'm going to talk about is in general about what I just said. In November, I'll finish that conversation. Believe me. This was posted on a website tonight, this afternoon. Folks, listen up. The Parish Council Chair, Mike Lorino, oh, that's me, so that's why I'm saying this, was proposing an ordinance that would require the developers to put in 2 retention ponds, and this would be a mandate for all developments as well. I think I just said that. Remember that. I think I just said that. It was suspected to go to the floor week September 5th. That's today. If this person would have been at the agenda review meeting or checked anything that he wanted to check that they're so important that they check, they would have seen that it was discussed at the September, prior to this meeting last week, that it would be postponed. But they didn't. They didn't. They like to post. But our sources tell us that developer, Mr. Bruce Weiner, has met with Mike Lorino as this proposed ordinance might kill his project. And it appears Lorino is now planning to pull the ordinance for at least another 90 days, maybe forever. Once again, he didn't listen to what I said. But he can write whatever the hell he wants because it's Facebook and it's internet. Typical politicians that are controlled by the developers, all to the detriment of our community. Let me tell you what's the detriment to our community. This. You know why? Because I had citizens send me an email today that basically said, Mike, please help us. We don't want shall not out. And I had to tell them this was a damn lie or an untruth. Let me just change that to untruth or inaccurate. So, as I said, take my word for it, I'll address it in November. So let's go to the ladies and gentlemen in the audience who want to speak. I have a bunch of cards, and there's some on there that do not want to speak. So I want to make it perfectly clear to you. I know why you're here. And trust me, shall not will never come out of my ordinance. It may not pass, because I don't run this council. But I know there's good men and women up here on this council that'll listen to a fair assessment. And not one time has shall not been in place to come out or discussed. I have met with a lot of people on this. I have met with a lot of people in my district and non in my district. But I never met with him because he can't find my phone. But the bottom line is, if you're here and you're concerned and you don't want to speak about this, and you're concerned about shall not, I think it's pretty clear where I'm coming from. I'm sorry, but I'm a little passionate on Facebook, I'll just leave it alone. Mr. Al Hamway.
Thank you, sir, for allowing me to speak. My name is Al Hamway. I live at 60162 Oak Lawn Avenue, Lacombe, Louisiana. I'm here representing 6 organizations that are behind me tonight. They are the East and West Chamber of Commerce, North Shore Home Builders Association, St. Tammany Corp., which is an economic development district, North Shore Business Council, and New Orleans Metropolitan Association of Realtors. First, I'd like the CEOs of those organizations to stand for me. And then I'd like the membership who are here that I am representing tonight in this speech to stand also. Thank you all. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to put input into this serious matter. Unfortunately, I have to read this speech because, as you see, I represent a number of people, and I want to be very careful as to how I present this. We are concerned about the proper growth and development of our community. To be very clear, the #1 concern now and always will be, and always has been, the health and safety of the citizens we serve as business organizations. We want to do all that's reasonably possible to ensure safe and sound developments and construction and to prevent flooding of our homes, businesses, and subdivisions. Our organizations have followed this ordinance rewrite process for the past several years. Several of us tonight have served in an original committee that began the review of all codes and ordinances some 2 years ago. We provided a comprehensive review and input, as well as suggested changes to the planning staff and the administration. That process was stopped about 15 months ago. We now come to the table again because we are concerned about the recently introduced proposal and feel that additional analysis is needed for various sources. Since the adoption of the current ordinances, issues like advancements in technology and modeling, the $1.2 million watershed grant initiative, the state and Florida parishes, and the final adoption of FEMA flood maps, among a list of related topics, all need to be considered. Additionally, drainage knows no boundaries. The parish, the cities of Covington, Mandeville, Slidell, Pearl River, and Bush all need to be working together to form a similar clear guidelines that we all can follow. While economic growth is very important and a major part of our existence, we never want to override the health and safety of the citizens of St. Tammany Parish with improper development. We have always believed that it's also your feelings as the parish council and administration to also never override the health and safety of our citizens. No honorable business community would logically put themselves over the citizens they serve because in the long run, it would not be beneficial to any of us.
That's time's up, Mr. Al.
Okay. Since I have a whole bunch of people behind me, can I finish?
No, but if I do that, I have to go down a slippery road. Yes, sir. Yes. Would you like, Amy, would you like to yield the time to Mr. Al, or would you like to come up and say anything? I'll give it to him, sure. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
We also support Councilman Lorino's recent suggestion that we...
Excuse me, Al.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Put on, if you turn my mic on, the motion I put on the floor was to postpone this to November.
Yes, sir.
This is getting out of the boundaries. I listened to a lot of the speech in it, and it covers somewhat in there, but I want to make sure that people address the motion to postpone and not the ordinance itself.
Okay, well, this is the motion to postpone, and the way I understand what you're saying, Steve, but when people come, and whether it's a citizen or whoever, and we are looking at an issue, I'm going to move forward with it unless I'm outvoted. So unless I have 8 votes against, I'm moving forward.
They have a right to speak.
You go ahead, Mr. Al.
Thank you. We also support Councilman Lorino's recent suggestion that we reinstitute the original committee and take up where they left off and allow them to again review all codes and ordinances in a holistic approach, as there is room for improvement in some areas. Responsible growth and development is the only logical process to ensure the health and safety of all concerned. We are also very much aware of the economic impacts that may affect our construction industry. However, our organizations have not in the past and will not in the future put only financial considerations over the health and welfare and the reputation of our business community. We support Councilman Lorino's tabling, and we stand ready to work with the citizenry of the parish council and administration to swiftly complete the full process and review. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Al. I have a few questions, Al.
Yes, sir.
I know you said you're representing the home builders, the chamber and all, so I can't ask you about a couple of things, and I'll ask them in a minute, but how many times did we meet on this subject? You and I?
4.
And your board?
4 times, I believe.
Okay. 4 times?
Yes, sir.
Every time that we met, did I always convey the word shall not would remain in my ordinance?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Al, being you representing a couple of those people, I'm going to ask them to come up for a minute also.
Sure.
Miss Amy, would you come up? And just state who you represent, please.
I'm Amy Ebersabel with the North Shore Home Builders Association.
Thank you, ma'am. Miss Amy, how many times did we meet?
We met, I think, 3 times.
3 times. And we discussed the ordinance and the amendment, correct?
That's right.
And each time we met, did I insist that shall not would always remain in this?
Yes, you did. And you said that in my email also when I thanked you for meeting with us.
Yes, ma'am.
That you had no intention of changing that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Osborne? Please state your name and who you represent.
Lacey Osborne, representing the St. Tammany West Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. Lacey, how many times did I meet with you and your board?
I believe 4.
Okay, 4 times. Now, this is 4 times. All these meetings are since the shall not came up. So that's 4 times 4 times 4. In those discussions, did I always insist that shall not would be in my ordinance amendment?
Yes, you did.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, no, they don't need it. Miss Jackie Hall? Miss Hall? Thank you, ma'am. Miss Margaret Broad? I can't hear what she's saying.
For the record.
Okay. Okay. Miss Margie Ficknell, you're on the committee. Come on up and say something.
Sure.
You have 3 minutes, and I know you can do it.
I know. Margie Bickner Prey, Lacombe, Louisiana. I think, and I apologize for that statement that upset you so much, obviously.
You didn't write it, so don't worry
No,
about it.
I know I
But you
didn't.
know who did, but go ahead.
No, I don't actually.
Oh, I'll tell you.
But I think what you and other members of the council and parish government need to understand is that people are frustrated. People are very angry. They're upset. They're seeing their homes and their investments ruined because of greed, basically, for the almighty dollar. And that upsets them, you know. It's kind of human nature. I mean, it's easy to understand. I mean, one side's upset because they're not going to make as much money, but other people are upset because they're losing their investments. And that's something that people get very upset about. The people in the audience, I'm representing people here not officially, but how many of you feel like we should build less homes in low areas that cause flooding to other homes?
Miss Margie, you can ask me to ask that question.
Well, I mean, you know, he
And
represents
that's
a group.
okay, that's okay.
I
Just
represent
ask me.
not an organized group, but a bunch of homeowners who care and who are upset. I like that the shall not stay in. I thank you for that. But what worries me is the shall not was the only change we made to that resolution. That is a standing resolution or ordinance. The only change made was changing, I think it was may to shall not.
That's correct.
I don't see why that's such a big legal issue that we have to postpone this again when we didn't change the wording of the ordinance. It's the ordinance the way it was meant to be written, and all we're doing is reinforcing that. So there's no room for discussion or Mr.
You talk to
our
me.
engineer, you know, having
You
problems.
talk to me.
Yeah. So I'm sad to see it postponed until November. And you're saying a vote in December then?
In November.
Yeah.
And
Well, the
vote
vote
in
to put it
November.
on in
Vote in
November,
November.
yes, yes. And I hope that you will consider not just developers' opinions, but the opinions of the people. And what most people here would like to see is a moratorium on building for the whole parish until a study is done that shows where drainages are, how they affect current established buildings, and not allow the same kind of development we've been allowing with the fill and slab that causes people issues who have pre-existing buildings. So that's it. Just remember that. Remember your constituents, not the builders necessarily, the people who own the buildings.
Thank you. And I have a few responses for you.
Okay.
So did I hear if someone is upset, they could write something on Facebook that is a lie about a person?
Well, they can. Is nice.
And that's
No.
good? Is that it? Would you do that?
I've attacked people on Facebook.
That's not what I asked you. I asked you, answer my question. Would you lie about a person on Facebook?
No,
Okay,
not knowingly.
okay, that's enough on that one.
Yeah.
Have I, as
But
chairman,
they may not know that they're lying.
have I, as chairman, used the term shall not, and has the developers, did they want shall not?
I wouldn't say they wanted it.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Definitely not.
All right, okay, so
Yeah.
anyway, we'll move it forward, and you know where we at, and
Yeah.
thank you, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your time on the committee.
Thank you. And I'd like to be on the new committee as well.
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Clark, Mr. Wren. I got a few here, you know, I mean,
Ready?
you can,
You ready?
go ahead, Ren.
Ren
Only have
Clark,
a
I
couple
live,
more. Only have two.
I live 21. Do I have to hit the green button?
No, I got to get it started.
Go ahead, sir.
Excuse me. Let me clear this. It's acting up. There you go.
Okay, Ren Clark, Old Mandeville, 2,100 feet from the seawall. In the tropical storm Wuss that was Barry, I had more water than in my 33 years of living there. We are not doing things correctly when it comes to water management.
Okay, Ren, we
I'm
just got.
glad that you are pushing this down the road because I think the question to be asked is why do we need retention ponds? And I think that we need to look at that carefully because it could be that we're doing a lot of things wrong that require retention ponds. Weed whacking, deforestation, impervious surfaces. We're not looking carefully enough at that. And here's the good news. you have some of the more talented people in St. Tammany Parish, perhaps in the region. I just read a report given 4.5 years ago by one of your engineers in which she outlined the reasons why we need retention ponds, because we build too densely and we build in flood-prone areas. It's very clear. And she was giving this presentation to a national group with FEMA on how to redefine flood zones. But I think that it's good that you're pushing this down, because as you push it down, you will be able to ask the fundamental question, why do we need them in the first place? Because in answering that question, you come up with a whole range of ordinance possibilities that could be implemented. And nothing is cheaper than ink on an ordinance instead of spending millions on new seawalls 1 foot higher. If you raise your seawall 1 foot, God will bring you 2 more feet of waves every time. So in Mandeville, we've been doing it wrong. And I suspect that if we've been doing it wrong in Mandeville, we could have been doing it wrong in other places in the parish. And it goes back to that fundamental question.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Well, I still have 1 minute and 15.
Well, I appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Groby. Oh, okay. Okay, I looked at the other ones, and everybody else just has for or against, but we're not actually voting on for or against at this time. And so I'm going to go ahead and, unless you want to talk on whether or not to postpone tonight or not, but go ahead, Mr. Allen.
I'm sorry, I must have mismarked my card.
You did.
I apologize for that. Again, thank you, Chairman Lorino, for doing all of this about the flood zones. I've been discussing this for a decade, and we're finally starting to have real discussions on what's going on. The first off is the gentleman with the Builders Association. He had plenty of chances to input on this over this last year. We had 4 or 5 meetings in the spring, and we didn't hear too much from them. Also, I've heard from people, and this is not my own personal view, but just to let you know, that they feel like y'all are pushing this off till after the election so that y'all can vote this down. And that's pervasive throughout the community right now. I wanted to bring that to your attention, that just postponing it is pretty much the same as killing it for a lot of the residents in the area. And they're not going to look too kindly on that. As far as what Mr. Wren was saying, push it down the rest of the ordinances, yeah, there are a lot of things we can do for flood zones. This is an easy pass, though. This will help to mitigate some of the consequences of filling in the flood plains. Won't mitigate all of them, but it's a start. And there's absolutely no reason not to vote on it today. A vote to pass it down the road, to pass it after the election, it really just looks like passing the buck to a lot of people. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin, you're the last one.
John Martin, 12375 Ark Road. I wanted to thank Mr. Lorino for what he's done. He's done an excellent job. I think the shall not is a very simple, very straightforward, very good answer to this ordinance, and I'm all in favor of the shall not, and I think Mr. Lorino certainly should not take any flack for what he's doing. So I just appreciate that and want to let y'all know. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Groby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My comments are a little bit twofold. One, I have to address a question to legal, and then I'm going to come back to you and the council. This has been on the agenda for over 30 days now, correct? It was introduced last month, and it's laying over, and we could theoretically not postpone and vote on it and create it, and it would lay over tonight, correct? It's been on the agenda for 30 days, right? So there's no, it's met the legal requirements of introduction, layover, and we could act on it, correct? In 30 days, is there any issue legally that y'all have now questioned after looking at this for 30 days as to whether or not this is a legal ordinance?
The question specifically that I'm researching is what to do about any appeal to the BOA and to the Planning Commission. So it is a little complicated. I'm sorry for any delay that I'm causing, but this is a novel change. I know it seems like a simple change, but I'm grappling a little bit with where an appeal of a denial based on shall not would go.
And this wasn't out there 60 days ago?
No,
This is not directed directly to you, but I mean, how was this not recognized 60 days ago versus the last 30 days as a sticking point? And I don't mean that as an insult. I legitimately and honestly, heartfeltly answering, because I know Mike is behind this. I know Mike wants shall not. I am supportive of shall not. But the next October meeting is October 3rd, 2 days before an election. We need to move on this. It is that important to the people in this parish. Mike, I know you're behind this. Let's vote on this tonight. Substitute motion, get it on the floor and get it over with tonight, Mike. No postponement on this. Let's get it put to bed.
Ms. Cullen?
Yeah, I apologize for not having additional language to you, but I didn't know which way the council was going to go before the meeting where you picked the shall not, and I apologize for not getting it faster.
If it is challenged, it'll have to be challenged by one of the home builders or another citizen or another group. But let's get this on there so they have a legal right to challenge. You can't challenge what we don't vote on. Let's put this to bed tonight, Mike.
Let me answer your question, Jake. When we had our special meeting or public meeting at that night, I went ahead and made a motion to include the word shall not. At that time, when the public meeting was going to be discussed, no motion was going to be put forward, okay? That was the intention. I went ahead and did it, and I received 8 votes to do it, or 9, I forget what it was. But in fairness to the other council members, it shouldn't have went until last month. So that is, I'm not saying that's an excuse, I'm just giving you what the facts are, okay? And it's very important that we have this, because I want to make sure it's legal, and I want to make sure it sticks, and we'll get it as soon, if Ms. Collin has something, we'll get it sooner. But I'm just explaining to you, and, you know, you have every opportunity to make any amendment that, you know, amendment to the motion or whatever the case may be.
How long, I'm sorry.
But anyway.
How long will you take your research, Colin? Couple of weeks, we could do maybe a special meeting and get this adopted? Is that important?
Well, no, I know it's very important. I'm fine with it being very important. But once again, I want legal to come to me and say, we have it, and if they would have something, we can do that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Canulet.
All right. Very emotional topic, huh? So let's step back in time a little bit. A couple months ago, I proposed the ordinance for the fire alarms, met with a lot of, can't believe you're doing that, council members, public. You know, at the end of the day, it was the right thing to do. And the way it was, reason it's right is because they didn't rush into anything. They sat down and they put an ordinance together that's not only going to be picked up by Jefferson, it's probably going to be picked up by every other parish in this state. It takes time to get these things right. Lawsuits are quick and easy. When you don't do it right and you rush into it, we end up in court and we all lose. Developers lose, public loses, we all lose. We all have to pay. You know, we have the ambulance contract used by, I don't know now, how many, 8 states, Steve? How many people are using that thing? At least 8 states. This is the contract that has carried all over the United States, come out of this parish. It's the model for safety in ambulance care in the country. So we need to take our time. We need to do this right. This is too important to rush into it and get it wrong. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Canulet. Mr. Balisaro.
I sat on the committee. We've got a long way to go. Where we are right now has to be redigested with another committee to get the components that will be able to address two simple words, shall not. To me, from a legal standpoint, because of my corporate experience, really opened up the doors where how do you put in place the proper procedures for the Department of Development and Engineering to get things right. So if somebody wants to do a project, they know they can move forward with it and they won't get sued. I don't know people who want to start a project to end up being sued or lose money on the project. This has got to be looked at further. And a couple of meetings ago, we talked about this, that once this was adopted, and a part of that would be to form a committee of some of the same people and some new people to look at the impact on the rules and regulations of the Department of Development, because it's critical. What the heck does shall not do to the process for anybody who wants to do anything in the area of development? It's not clean anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I could talk on a few different topics that in my history of being on the city council and the parish council, I could relate to examples of when it's reasonable to consider, take time, and get it right, okay? I also understand that some people prefer expediency. I do. It's one or the other. I would just like to say, I have no problem with voting, none. Ready to vote. However, when I hear, and I don't think an apology from Ms. Carlin is necessary. I appreciate that she offered it, but it's not required. We've had attorneys for years. The courts ruled. We have another group of attorneys who I will tell you are part of the civil division of the district attorney's office. They're doing a fine job for us. Before, we used to get hit with our attorneys were no good. Everybody knows that. That's come out. I see people shaking their head, yes. Let's be honest. I understand that some people might view it as putting off the vote. But let me tell you, there's 10 people up here that are either unopposed or not seeking re-election. So that's more than 8 votes. That's 8 votes or more. But our attorneys, and there's a reason you have them, our attorneys are telling us. Now, I know I have a sense of exactly what Ms. Carlin is referring to, because I can tell you in my own mind, I had some concerns in the beginning. It was never about shall not. It was never about was it pro-developer, was it pro-citizen. It should be fair. But what would the appeals process be? My own thoughts. I never expressed this to the legal department. I was just my own inner thoughts. And the reason I'm saying that is a development company may have, and I want to say may, because not all of them have to be extremely wealthy, but a development company may have the resources to go to court and appeal. Do our citizens have the resources? If it goes to Board of Adjustments, which is the original thought, correct, Ms. Carlin? If it goes to the Board of Adjustments, that appeal is not to the parish council. That appeal is to the 22nd Judicial District Court. I did some of my own thinking and some of my own research without knowing that Ms. Carlin and Mr. Kerry Menard's group are on the same track. I'm hearing this tonight. That is encouraging to me. Because let me tell you, going from Board of Adjustments, nothing wrong with them. If a citizen has to appeal to 22nd Judicial District, that could be a very, very expensive process. Now, is that fair for our citizens to have an appeal process that costs an extremely large amount of money, as opposed to being fair for a big, let's just say, a big company, right, that can afford it? So, I think Mr. Lorino, as our chairman, has shown good leadership. I think he's shown in his comments, I'll remove the Facebook for a second, I understand, but in his comments to be very sincere about wanting to get this right. To go against our own legal advice, especially on something as important as how do we give both sides the right to an appeal without it costing a couple of $100,000, to me is pretty important. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bender. And seeing no one else, I just want to say,
I want to make it perfectly clear that Carla and Lisa, not at y'all. I just don't understand why. It's hard for me to accept why this is now an issue and it wasn't an issue 2 months ago. That's all. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
What was the lady, what was your name? Because we've cleared the cards.
Well, my name is Joan Simon, and I do have a card.
Where's the other one? Oh,
I don't see it.
what do you got? There was a set of cards where people didn't want to speak. They filled them out, so we're going to check to see if your name is in there.
There's no card.
Better speak.
Okay. Ma'am?
We
Miss
can't
Si-
find your card. Come on up.
Miss Simon? Yeah, come on, come on. But there is no card. I did not pass you out.
I don't know what happened to it, but there was. Thank you. I appreciate you letting me speak.
Your name and
And I
address.
want to thank Councilman Groby for, I think.
Your name and address,
Oh, I
please.
apologize. I did say my name earlier. It's Joan Simon. I live in Covington in the Riverwood subdivision. And I came tonight because of the ordinance. I am very sorry to hear that it's being postponed. I don't really buy the excuses that I hear from the council on this, quite frankly. It just sounds like nothing but excuses. There's time to air all this and vet all this. Thank you, Councilman Groby, for wanting to push this forward. I would urge you all to please vote on this. Don't be afraid. This is a simple little change. From my understanding of it, it's something, it shouldn't be that much of an issue. I really appreciate Councilman Lorino bringing it up, and I don't see why you can't vote on it tonight. It sounds very political to me and very much like stalling. And there are a lot of people here, and I'm not the only one. We are tired of this, all the flooding issues in this parish, the bad building decisions that have been made, the lack of responsibility. And what Ren said about the ponds makes a whole lot of sense to me. So I would urge you all, please do the right thing for the people of St. Tammany. I'm just one person. And there are a bunch of other people who are here tonight, but believe me, there are plenty of us in this parish. And that's all I want to say. Development here is fine, business is fine, but let's do it responsibly, please. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Seeing no one else, I'm going to just say one other thing. We had a change of attorneys and things like that this year, moving that forward. And from day one, I've always had the confidence of the people sitting at that table. I've expressed it numerous times, and I still feel the same way. I understand there's always legal issues, and you have to look at it that way. So, Mr. Stefanczyk.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think that, and I made the motion to postpone. And I made the motion to postpone because I know in working with our attorneys what we go through. And I can tell you, I've been doing short-term rentals and we have had all kinds of a mess and potential lawsuits and everything else over that. And we haven't even got the ordinance done and both sides have threatened to sue us.
Yes, sir.
So what I want to see is that them make certain that they have got all the wording in there correct. And if Carlin says she's not ready to go, I'm willing to say we're not ready to go.
I understand.
And that's why I put it up before.
And if Colin says
And-
she's
and
ready
I
to-
think
Okay.
that flooding, especially on the west side of the parish, it may be some other places, my district don't have it quite like they have on the west side of the parish, but I'm going to tell you, nobody likes to flood. And we really need to address these things and get something going. But I also want to do it the right way. And I think that's what we're trying to do tonight. Thank you.
Okay.
No.
Mr. Balisaro.
Okay. What some people are forgetting or are not aware of, I attended all these meetings. I sat up here. In the last two meetings, what we brought up is that once we voted, we were going to form another committee to establish the process of how we're going to do this. If you're just coming to this as the first time, it's very clear you would not know that. And that was the key thing, because I sat on zoning and planning years ago and fought different issues. Al knows it. I'm the person who came up what they call the larger lot, the 90 by 140. I got crucified after that. But guess what? It was the right thing to do. This, we've got to do the same thing, to form a committee to look at the impact of this, because it is major. Because when you switch from may to shall not, look at the complexity. And that's why I concur with what we're doing. Thank you.
Mr. Groby.
Got my mic on? Okay. I had made a motion to act on this. I'd like to call for a second to see if this will pass. Do I have a second from my colleagues to push it through tonight?
There's a motion on the floor.
I made a motion on the floor when I was speaking.
No, Steve made a motion first. I'm assuming you can make an amendment to the motion.
Okay.
Am I right, Don?
Yes,
Yes, that's what you need to do. Is that what you're doing?
yes.
Okay. Mr. Groby made Mr. Groby has a motion, an amendment to the motion to postpone that will say that he would like to have it voted on tonight.
Correct.
And he's asking if there's a second.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Mr. Smith seconded. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He can make an amendment to the motion to postpone. He cannot, if he wants to address the issue of voting tonight or not, then he votes against the motion to postpone, or he votes in favor of it to go forward. But you have to change the date and time of the ordinance if you're going to make an amendment to postpone. And it would still say, I move to postpone for, and he would put his date in there. So he really needs to, the motion on the floor gives him that option already to do what he wants to do. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. And Steve's the parliamentarian also, so thank you, Steve. So we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Stavancic, second by Mr. Balisaro, to go ahead and postpone until November. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. With the vote in November. It'll come to the council in November for a vote. Yes, sir. Ordinance for adoption, right. That's what I'm saying. Yes, that's correct. That's correct. That is correct. Okay, please vote.
Motion passes with 13 yeas, 1 nay, no one absent.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, okay, okay. All right, yeah, we'll take a break for 5 minutes.
No, this is
Let
good.
everybody clear out.
Yeah.
Yes? Yes, but we're going to take a break for 5 minutes until they clear out. And she had to go to the bathroom.
Hey, hey. I want to see Jake. Go ahead. Thank you.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get started, please. Okay, thank you. We'll get started. I just want to make sure that everyone understands, and it's on the record, that this ordinance will come up for introduction.
It's not introduction.
What? Adoption, I'm sorry. This ordinance will come up for adoption in November. Adoption in November, okay? And if we get it beforehand, it'll come up beforehand. Okay. Yes, number one. Resolution number one, CS number C-6161, resolution approving the issuance of limited tax certificates of Fire Protection District Number 9 of the Parish of St. Tammany, State of Louisiana. Mr. Schuster. Schluter.
I answer to all of those. Grant Schluter with Fuller Udell Bond Counsel.
You'll even answer to Grant.
That's right. And Chief Brewer is here from the Fire District. This is just basically
Thank you.
standby authorization to borrow up to $75,000. The district, the chief, has indicated they'd like to have that authority and proceed with the bond commission, which we have filed for them, so that in the event they need to do a cash flow loan for operations, in the event of a hurricane, say, they'd be able to do it, and they would not have to wait 2 or 3 months before they could get a loan from the fiscal agent bank.
Mr. Tanner?
Mr. Tanner?
Motion by Mr. Tanner, second by Mr. Toledano.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Resolution number 2, CS number C-6162. Oh, we did that one, okay. Great. Number 8, resolution CS number C-6168. Resolution to concur, not concur with Slidell annexation, rezoning of 0.44 acres from Parish A-4 to Slidell A-6, Ward 9, District 14. Mr. Smith.
Chairman, I had a question I needed some clarification on, though. If,
Yes, sir.
Public Works, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Could entertain, either engineering.
Jay?
But in the resolution, it states that the street where this property is located, Indiana Avenue, and this roadside ditches.
Why don't you ask me or Sydney the question? We'll get someone to
Sure.
answer, okay, if that will be okay, because
That's
we'll know
good.
where it needs to come from. Would that
Thank you.
work?
All right.
Thanks.
But it states in here that the roadside ditches on that street are not in the parish maintenance system. Yet we are looking to concur or not concur with an annexation to the city of Slidell of only 2 lots on that street. And so I'm trying to figure out what's the impact as it relates to a justification, rather, for this annexation just on the fact that those ditches are not maintained on that street for those 2 lots? Or what about the rest of the lots on that street?
I would have to ask Mr. Davis, and he is not here right now. I will try to call him. If you will just give me a few minutes and we can come back with that answer, because I don't know what he has looked at, but I will find out and get you that answer before the night's over if you want to postpone this
Sure,
till
if I
later.
could postpone to the end of the agenda, or table it to the end of the agenda, Mr. Chairman, maybe?
Would that?
Wake him up.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Can you table this to the end of the agenda, maybe?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
I make that motion.
So,
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Ms. O'Brien. Please vote.
This is.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Okay, we'll go to appeals. Note, speaking time per side is 10 minutes, 3 minutes rebuttal, and 2-minute conclusion. Anita and Charles Yarborough, Mary Casper, Christina Fleming, and Joseph Bizzuto, appealing the Zoning Commission approval of June 4, 2019 to rezone 2.5 acres south of West Power Line Road, west of Highway 41, being 37190 West Power Line Road from A-2 Suburban District to A-2 Single Family Residential District and MHO Manufactured Housing Overlay, Ward 8, District 9.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to start the process. I have worked with the administration and with the petitioner and the people who had appealed this, and we worked up a resolution that's in an email. I want to read that because both parties concur with the content of the email. I'll read it, and I have Mr. Bizzuto or his wife come up. He's the petitioner, and Mr. Fleming over, Philip Fleming, will come up and speak from the people who had appealed it. Barbie, you want to come up to the mic? Let me read this so everybody knows what's being read into the record. As to me, from Aaron Starr, as requested below is a list of requirements that will need to be addressed during the permitting process. You only get to the permitting process if we approve the mobile home overlay, which I concur we need to do. The first one is a mobile home permit application will be needed to be submitted to the Department of Planning and Development. Number 2, a permit from the Louisiana Department of Health, LDH, will need to be provided with the mobile home permit application. 3, since a portion of the property is located in a critical drainage area, a site plan with elevations and drainage improvements will need to be prepared by the Louisiana licensed surveyor/civil engineer and submitted to the Department of Planning and Development. If elevation shows the natural ground is lower than the BFE, an engineered field plan with mitigation prepared by a Louisiana licensed civil engineer will need to be provided. I provided this, and Barbara and Mark Pursuter concur with it, so I just need you to say that.
Yes, sir, we do.
All right, thank you very much. I'd like to have the appellant, Mr. Phil Fleming, to come up to speak. I have reviewed this with them, and they concur. Thank you, Mr. Fleming.
Thank you. My name is Philip Casper. I live at 37206 West Power Line Road in Pearl River. I have a little over 5 acres. I've been there for 43 years, and my property is immediately adjacent to Mark Brasuda's property. And I feel like, as a property owner in St. Tammany Parish, for the length of time that I've been here, that I have the right to do anything I want to do, use my property, as long as I follow all the codes, the rules, and the regulations, and do no harm to my neighbor. I feel this way about our property. I also feel this way about Mark Brasuda's property. He has the same rights. And with that, not taking up too much more of your time, we concur with this resolution.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. I'd like a motion to concur with the zoning approval.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Thank you.
I need a motion for introduction.
Just need a second.
Motion, you made a motion?
Yeah, for the ordinance.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Tanner.
That's all.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Number 2, Ivan Malakvik, appealing the zoning commission denial on August 6, 2019 to rezone 3.93 acres located south of Highway 435, east of West Mermaid Lane, west of White Oak Lane, from A-1 Suburban District and RO Rural Overlay to HC-3, Highway Commercial District and RO Rural Overlay, Ward 10, District 6. Mr. Tanner. I have three people, Rich. You want me to call him? Okay. Mr. Richard Baumgartner? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Thank you. I'm Richard Baumgartner. I live at 75014 Woodland Road, Abita Springs. And I am here to request upholding the denial of this appeal. The parish, as you know, has a land use plan reflected in its zoning designations, which balances the interest of residential properties versus commercial endeavors. This plan is supposed to impart order and consistency so that people can make reasonable, rational decisions about where they want to live, where they want to work, so that realistic planning can take place. In contrast, every attempt at spot zoning, including this one in rural St. Tammany, chips away at that framework. It introduces uncertainty and distrust when buying property in rural St. Tammany for residential purposes. Each time that a piece of residential property is rezoned to commercial, it disrupts the dynamics of the area. It takes away from the quality of life, of rural life in the parish. It also raises several questions. Probably the most important is, what will the next owner of this rezoned property put in this place? It also asks the question, will this have a domino effect where people will no longer want to buy land for residential purposes, or even worse, they'll leave because they don't know, is the zoning going to be changed on a spot basis and they have some commercial enterprise next door? So in conclusion, I hope that the council will agree and with the denial of this appeal.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Robert? Mhm. No, you only have 10 minutes. Not each one of them have 10 minutes. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Thank you. My name is Robert Baumgartner. I live at 75002 Woodland Road, 1¼ miles from the petitioner's, the appellant's property. I have 35 acres there. I'm in opposition to the appeal and do not want the property rezoned. I have lived on my property since 1983, 36 years. Been very active a decade ago in providing input in the Northeast Study zoning draft map to help preserve the quality of life in this rural residential and agricultural area. At the time that the maps were being studied, there was a proposal by some developers to try to have part of Highway 435 to be rezoned from A1 to A3 high density and to include Highway Commercial District 2. The expressed desires of the vast majority of the local residents resulting in the Parish Council adopting the recommendations of its staff to keep the area zoned A1 with a rural overlay. Up till now, we've been mostly successful in maintaining the intended zoning of the area. The few exceptions I'm aware of occurred because of lack of actual notification to interested parties and thus were unopposed. Mr. Ivan's petition on the property, in which he has already been on a portion of his property rezoned earlier to Highway Commercial District 3, occurred. We had no knowledge of it. We weren't an exact neighbor to him, and those little signs, who knows what happens to them, we didn't know. So that went through unopposed, I imagine. But there's no reason to add insult to injury by increasing the size of this abhorrent zoning in this area and making it an even larger area, increasing the likelihood of an even larger out-of-character use would occur in the future. As I appreciate it, if it goes to Highway Commercial 3, permitted uses, some of which would be zoned for automotive service station centers and sales, storage facilities associated with insurance companies and related offices for wrecked and impounded vehicles, commercial recreation, lodging greater than 100 rooms, including apartments, hotels, and motels, nightclubs, bars, and lounges, bus, truck, and other transportation terminals, portable storage containers used for storage, and there are a host of others, all of which would be totally out of character. As I also appreciate, it would allow for them to build buildings up to 60 feet tall, which is way out of character with what's going on out there. So I strongly object to the appeal and having the original determination of the zoning commission overturned, which was to deny the rezoning.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Randy Pondashu? Can't make that up. Yes,
Good
sir.
evening.
Yes, sir.
I'm Randy Ponthieu. I live at 75263 Woodland Road in Abita, and I've lived there for right over 20 years now. At that time, when my wife and I moved out there, we wanted to move to a residential area where we could have animals and love the scenery that's out there. I do not feel that it would be right to overrule the denial that was already given, because now you have the opportunity of having a big commercial project on a highway where there's nothing but residential neighborhoods. So I ask that you consider this and keep the denial going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, I can't help that. Oh, he doesn't have to, okay.
Come to the mic.
And you have 10 minutes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, I'm Ivan Milicevic. I live in 28480 Highway 435, Beta St. Louisiana. I came in front of you a while back, and I got approval to build my wine tasting / venue, and I'm under construction right now. So, because I own property all with that 10 acres, I went to permanent department, and I told them if I can park in my cars on the side. They told me I cannot do it. I have to rezone this area to put a parking lot. So that's why I'm coming in front of you to change it. Or I have to take 1,000 semi-grapes to put this parking lot in front of the building. That's why I'm asking for this 3.5 acres. And 70% of 3.5 acres, it's a pond. So I just need the area so I can park in cars there. It's not going to be, no construction going to be done, just a parking lot. So I don't have to take all that grapes in front of my building. That's the only reason why I'm changing, try to get it rezoned.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Go to Richard
Yeah,
Taylor.
we have a 3-minute rebuttal. Mr. Baumgartner, somebody want to say anything?
Very quickly, it's quite obvious. We don't have to worry about just what his intentions are, as minimal as they may be under the approved uses. It's not one of the more egregious. But once it's rezoned, it's rezoned. And all of these other things would be approved uses at that point. So we've got to protect it because it's a whole host of horrors for us.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ivan, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Just one thing. I don't have to have it, whatever, H3H commercial. It can be whatever years that I can park in my cars there. So that's what I'm not asking for to make it something like, I know you mentioned lots of things. I know like it, whatever, all this stuff it can be used for it. But all I'm asking, approval so I can get it, maybe change it some different so I can park in my cars there. So I don't have to take my grapes. That's all.
Thank you. We have a 2-minute conclusion, but I think do y'all have anything else you want to add? Mr. Ivan? What's that? I will. Mr. Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's what I was going to ask, was it, can it be, in all due respect to Mr. Tanner's district, can it be, why does it have to be HC3? If you're just going to put a parking lot, can it be HC1? Can it be NC something? May I address Sydney?
Sydney?
It would have to be at least HC2. That's what the main tract had been rezoned to. I think the original application was HC3, and it was moved down to HC2 on the original application. The parking requirements of the development code requires that required parking for any use be on the minimum zoning for that use. So you can't take zoning for an HC2 use. You can't take parking for an HC2 use and put it on an A1 piece of property or an NC piece of property. It has to be that same zoning or a more intensive zoning.
Mr. Tanner?
Thank you, Mr. Lorino. First of all, I don't want to be negative, but if we had a different way to do this and the man came in and had his property rezoned because he could have a great place and what have you, and we told him how much parking he had to have and what have you, and now we've decided that he's got to change his parking classification to put in whatever zoning calls for. Now, why wasn't he told that in the beginning? He could have applied for the right of zoning, and he wouldn't have had this appeal.
I don't know that we had his plans from the original.
You had his plans because y'all approved it and denied it the month before.
No, we did not. We made a recommendation on rezoning of property. We did not approve plans when the original zoning came through. We do not look at plans when the original zoning comes through.
Anyway, I'm not going to argue with the staff. I would like, Mike, Ivan, how many acres of land do you have?
I'm sorry, I have 40 acres.
40 acres?
40, yeah.
Okay, and how many of it is being used for your grape farm?
9 acres is grapes, and that whatever building gonna go, and on the side that I have 3 acres with pond where I thought I can park in cars. But when I went to their office, they told me I can't park in my cars there. So, and I even told them before I even started this project, I'm building this inside the vineyards. So, and I told them square footage, I told them all that stuff. So all that stuff should be, planned before. So this way we don't have to come to this point right now. That I feel bad for guys out there, but I don't know what else I can do, where I can possibly park in this car, or I can have to cut all that grapes. But I've been baby these grapes since 2014, so.
I have one more, well, maybe more than one, but I have another question. How many acres of, how many functions will you have a year on this 40 acres at this wine tasting place?
I don't know. I have lots of people that want to come and do wine tasting, so I guess.
You're not going to do it every day, though.
No. Maybe on weekends. I really don't. I hate to tell you something that if it's not true. Maybe it's going to be happen because we got so many people interested. They love this what I'm doing, and they think it's great for community. They think it's great what I'm accomplishing there. So. It's kind of, we got lots of interest in this thing. So it's kind of, I'm excited about it because I put everything I got in this thing. So, I thought it's going to be great for Parish, and it's, I can't, answer you. I don't know how many people, maybe we're going to have it, 2, 3 a week, or maybe we're going to have, I really don't know.
Okay.
And, but all, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out, break my brains before all this, if I can do something. But whatever I come up to, I have to change the zoning to do this parking lot. So
Right.
at first I thought I can just park in, it's my land. It's going to be gravel parking lot anyway. So I'm not going to put no concrete. I'm not going to put, so they can just park in there. So when I met with, they told me, no, I can't do that.
I don't think
Thank you, sir. Mr. Tanner?
I don't think they're complaining about the parking so much as they are the zoning. Which means if you decide not to do the great thing, then you got to,
I understand. I perfectly understand where they're coming from, but this is.
My next thing is going to be to Mr. Fano again. Can we table this and come up with a amendment to change the zoning so that it fits that need that he has? Or restricted covenant?
You can table it and we can look at it, but my understanding of what he's doing is, we attempted a zoning amendment to do that, and it did not pass.
On this case, did it?
No, it wasn't on this, it was no specific case, but it did get caught up in another case. We tried event facilities.
May I suggest that you do postpone it, and we will look at it again and see if there's anything we can offer.
Well,
I don't know of anything.
I'll be glad to postpone it to the next meeting, but if it doesn't, if we're going to work out something, then I'm going to recommend that we overturn the zoning commission. And because this doesn't make sense to me. You got 3 acres of, that you got to change because of a 40-acre tract. And, it's not like that you're going to build a 5-story building on that 3-acre tract. It's a pond, so it doesn't make sense.
How you think I feel?
I know, Mike, I understand. You understand what I'm saying? Let us table it for a month and get it worked out.
Thank you, sir.
I move that we table it.
Thank you. Mr. Stefanski. You on?
I know that, and I would support, if Richard's going to do that, I would support that, but I would also like to think that there's a way we could put a deed restriction on there.
That's what I was going to ask
And
you.
that it be adhered to, or rezone a very small section of the property to allow for parking, and that way the overall zoning would be correct. And I think hopefully we could do either one of them, and I would like to see them explore that.
Sydney? We get that sometime, they'll come in and they'll say,
I would
we'll put
refer
a
to
deed
legal counsel
restriction on it. Is that possible?
I would refer to legal counsel on the restrictions, on those restrictions.
Okay, well, that's just something we maybe look at, Mr. Tanner. We will look at that. Okay, perfect.
He said he would have to defer to legal counsel to tell whether he can do that or not.
Okay,
Get discretion in these.
gotcha, okay. Mr. Toledano, did you want to say anything?
Ms. Carlin is on the verge of saying something in that moment.
You go ahead, ma'am.
On the verge?
She's on the verge.
Is my mic,
Correct.
okay. The council should not consider deed restrictions, but if the two parties want to agree to deed restrictions and it eliminates the objection next month, then just, the council cannot consider a deed restriction.
But if they put a deed restriction on it, all those other things that they're very concerned with could not happen. Is that correct?
That deed restrictions will have to be exclusively between two private parties. The
I know,
parish cannot.
But I'm just asking the legal side on it. I mean, can they break it? What happens if you break it, I guess I'll ask you.
Would have to be a legal challenge between the
Okay,
two private
okay,
parties.
Okay. Well, that's something you might want to consider, Mr. Ivan, during this month, is talk to the gentleman, and because we do it all the time, they'll come in and say they'll put a deed restriction on something, and we'll go ahead and say, okay. Yes, sir, come on.
I know maybe it's a stupid question. What happened if I park in my car on my property?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just asking, what happened? I mean, I'm insured. I'm gonna have, I'm having big insurance on. I just try to please my neighbors because I really hate to going through all this stuff, But I just don't understand, I mean, again, it's 70% of pond.
We understand that, but that's not the issue. The issue is what else can happen if you change your mind or you sell the property. So
This is where I'm gonna die.
I understand that. My suggestion
I'm
is
just letting you
you and them sit down and try to work something out. We're going to postpone it, as Mr. Tanner said, and you have a month to do that, and then we'll come back and look at it. So y'all please at least discuss it and then come back with us.
I understand. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Mr. Toledano, did you want to say anything?
My comments were going to track what Ms. Carlin said, so I defer.
Okay, thank you. Please, Mr. Tanner has a motion to postpone, and a second.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro. Please vote.
I'll give you a copy of the comments.
You don't want that now?
Yeah.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Yeah, okay. All righty. Okay, number 2, ordinance calendar number 6186, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.12 acres from HC-2 to A-4A, Ward 8, District 13. Ms. Blanchard.
I make a motion to postpone.
Motion by Ms. Blanchard, second by Mr. Smith to postpone. Please vote.
For us to answer Mr. Thomas's question, we have the answer, so whenever you want us to do that.
Okay. Well, let's go to it right now.
Wait,
Mr. Smith?
Hold on.
Count, yeah.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith?
Sorry, Mr. Smith.
Yes, sir.
Yes, we, you can cancel
Mr.
mine.
Smith, just to make sure, you're talking about the fourth whereas in the resolution? The fourth, what that does, it basically states in a more detailed way that the Indiana Avenue and the ditches are in the city and therefore their responsibility. This property is abutted the city on 3 sides. The left side, when you're standing on the street itself, and behind it. So we don't have it, it's not in our maintenance system, it is subject to city maintenance. So it's just a clarification for anybody in the future who may wonder who has maintenance of that ditch. It's just informational.
Record that we are stating that.
Yeah, that this is.
That
this
they
is-
will still have to
that
maintain.
As of today, even before the annexation, the city has the street and the ditch.
Okay, and thank you for that answer. And subsequent to that, there are several other questions also that I need to get some clarification on, and I won't belabor that with the council right now, but I would like to postpone this until the next meeting.
Sure. Motion by Mr. Smith to postpone, second by Ms. Blanchard. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Okay, back to ordinance for adoption number 3, ordinance calendar number 6213, ordinance to extend for 6 months the moratorium on property bordered by Interstate 12, Highway 190, Highway 11, and Precinct S19, Ward 9, and District 14. Mr. Smith.
Move to adopt.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Ms. Blanchard. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 4, ordinance calendar number 6214, ordinance to authorize the parish president to accept the dedication and donation of Wells Road, District 3. Mr. Thompson.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Dean. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 5. Number 5, ordinance calendar number 6215, ordinance to amend Parish Code of Ordinance regarding location restrictions. Mr. Thompson.
So moved.
Mo-
Second.
Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Fitzgerald. We have Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. Caller Hernandez. This ordinance, adopted by the Parish Council on July 11th, tried to change the distance requirements for places that sell low alcoholic content beverages from 500 feet to 300 feet next to churches, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, public playgrounds, etc. The distance had been 500 feet or more in St. Tammany Parish for decades. It was noted after the ordinance was adopted that the language read 300 feet or less. Now this ordinance reads 300 feet or greater and 300 feet or less. Confused? The citizens and voters who spoke at the July meeting wanted to maintain, if not increase, the distance of 500 feet. It would make sense to have a greater distance between places that sell alcoholic beverages in churches, schools, playgrounds, etc., in areas outside of city limits where the densities would be less. I am requesting the council to amend this ordinance and make the distance 500 feet again or more that between places that sell alcoholic beverages and churches, schools, and playgrounds. So I'm requesting that you amend this ordinance to make it 500 feet again and recognize that 300 feet hopefully should not be the same as it within certain, like it was given examples, like it is in Slidell or in Mandeville. Because this would be parish-wide in unincorporated areas, and I'm suggesting that parish-wide, it would be better to have greater distances between places that sell alcoholic beverages and churches, schools, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
Terry wants to speak.
Mr. Hand?
I can address that issue.
Yes, sir.
The last amendment we made, Carlo is correct. It dealt with properties that were 300 feet or less that have a church or school. And the provision tracks state law, which said if that circumstance occurs, then you need to go to the respective church or school, and you can get a waiver. And that's exactly what the previous amendment said. This amendment deals with those properties that are 500 feet, between 500 feet and 300 feet. So it's a clarification. The last time we voted on this, there was some question about the interpretation. The first part of it was valid and is still valid. We're now saying that we're tracking state law, saying it's 300 feet or greater, then you can grant a low alcohol permit, basically beer and low alcohol content wine, which then gives a small entity the opportunity to serve beer and wine to people in package form, not for on-premises consumption. It gives them a better advantage to compete against some other businesses that may say, well, we need to go into a city because the city's rule is 300 feet. I gave you all the example last time. Every municipality in this parish has 300 feet or less. Why would we penalize our small businesses in the unincorporated portion of St. Tammany to almost force them to go into a city limit? It's ridiculous. So this is tracking state law as you currently have it before you.
Thank you, Terry. Mr. Thompson?
The whole thing in a nutshell is unincorporated St. Tammany Parish has different restrictions than the cities. Okay? Let's make everything even across the board. You know, state law is 300 feet, city law is 300 feet, unincorporated St. Tammany is 500 feet. Is that fair? That's not fair the way I look at it. So I want to thank Mr. Hand for working on this for me. He's been working on it for 6 months. But anyhow, you did a good job. So I move on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
We can vote now.
Seeing no one else in the queue, please go ahead and vote.
Chris came back, yay.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 6, ordinance calendar number 6216, ordinance to declare multiple tax adjudicated properties as surplus properties.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Taladano. Please vote. Oh, Mr. Smith, I'm sorry.
Just a quick question, Mr. Chairman. On your Exhibit A, describing these properties, if we could, going forward, kind of put a little bit more detailed information so that we can kind of at least understand where they're located. For instance, in the first one, it doesn't tell me a whole lot about where that is. So it would help if we could get just a little bit more detailed information about these properties going forward.
Thank you, sir. Okay, seeing no one else, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 7, ordinance calendar number 6217, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 5 acres from A-1 to A-1 and MHO, Ward 1, District 3.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Fitzgerald. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 8, ordinance calendar number 6218, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1 acre from A-2 to HC-2, Ward 5, District 6. Mr. Tanner?
Mr. Tanner.
I'm looking.
I'll second it.
He's looking.
A look at motion?
It's a look at motion, the first of the night.
I'm second the looking.
A motion to look at. He's looking at it.
I move table.
Table? I already did the second.
Motion by Mr. Tanner to table, second by Mr. Balisaro.
Postponed.
Postponed, rather. Please vote.
Motion is Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 9, ordinance calendar number 6219, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.89 acres from A-2 to A-3, Ward 6, District 11.
So moved.
Motion, second by Mr. Balisaro. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 6220, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 0.61 acres from A-2 to A-2 in MHO, Ward 3, District 2.
So moved.
Mr. Fitzgerald.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Fitzgerald, second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Mr. Fitzgerald? Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
When you second it, you have to vote.
No,
Okay. Ordinance calendar number 6221, ordinance to amend the 2019 operating budget, amendment number 8.
Second. Already did that. Hello?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Ordinance 6221, the Eighth Amendment to the operating budget, is to, based on the audited financial statements, to true up the fund balances in each of the funds.
Nope, no question. Motion by Mr. Toledano, second by Mr. Balisaro. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 6222, ordinance to amend the 2019 operating budget, amendment number 9. Mr. Toledano.
Motion to approve, and after second, Ms. Leslie, a brief explanation for the
Motion
record.
second by Mr. Balisaro.
Yes, sir. Amendment 9 is going to amend the budget in 2 funds. In the jail sales tax fund for some taxes that are still being received from the levy that expired over a year ago. For jail sales tax, it's $40,000. And for an amendment to the Tammany utilities budget, both in operations for the cost of fire hydrants that we're replacing and for overtime, and also for a project at North Shore North Shore campus to upgrade the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, seeing no questions, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
We have one off-the-floor agenda. Resolution to approve recommendation and authorization of Civil Division Assistant District Attorney to proceed with the settlement of a lawsuit. Well, we need a motion to.
So moved. Open the agenda.
Motion by Mr. Canulet, second by Mr. Stavancic. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay. Resolution to approve recommendation and authorize Civil Division Assistant District Attorney to proceed with the settlement of a lawsuit.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Stavancic, second by Mr. Balisaro.
Please vote.
Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, seeing no one else in the queue, motion by Mr. Toledano, second by Mr. Groby to adjourn.